Hi there, it's Luke here. If you go back and check my very first video I posted on this channel, you'll see that I was all fired up and turning over a new leaf and excited about diving into AI. I was very inspired by Liam Otley's channel, and my goal was to master a few AI skills that people actually pay money for. But let me tell you, when I first looked at programs like VoiceFlow and all the others, I can't even actually remember their names now, I was very intimidated. I mean, I'm 62, my brain isn't exactly the same as it was when I was 19 or 25. So yeah, I thought it was going to be a serious challenge. But it reminded me of my very first year back at Stellenbosch University, 1980. It's a long time ago. And for me, it was terrifying. I was absolutely terrified because my brother had put the fear of God into me, telling me how insanely tough it was. And to be fair, for him it probably was, because in those days he partied like crazy, drank like a fish, and well, studying wasn't exactly high on his list of priorities. But a lot of people fall into this trap. You get to university, new freedom, and suddenly discipline, what's that? But in his case, my parents kept giving him chances, because back then university was seen as the road to success. Spoiler alert, it's not always, but eventually did get his degree after a lot of attempts, but that's another story for another day. So I didn't actually get into medical school on my first application. Instead, I decided to go to Stellenbosch to do a BSc, and how I ended up there was a family friend of my folks raved about it, and he wasn't wrong. It's probably the most beautiful campus in South Africa. And before I even got there, I remember getting on the train to Johannesburg, and I bought a book on studying, and I read it from cover to cover, highlighting every page. And honestly, it did help. But back then, studying was all about rereading, reading, highlighting. Rereading was, as we know now, isn't actually the most effective way to learn. And I'm not an academic in the traditional sense of the word, but I still love learning, but I wasn't sort of top of the class. But I still enjoyed studying medicine. The material itself was fascinating. It's just a huge amount to master. Things like anatomy, physiology, pharmacology, and pathology. They're the sort of ground subjects, and they were just huge workloads. And they weren't necessarily difficult, but just a lot of information to get into your head. So on the basis of Liam Otley's advice, I got into VoiceFlow, which, as you know, is the AI-powered tool for designing voice apps. So after a week of trying to figure it out on YouTube, I felt completely overwhelmed. So I did what I always do. I turned to books, and I came across a book, Make It Stick by Peter C. Brown, which honestly is like the Bible of studying effectively. I've read it a couple of times, and I keep listening to the audiobook, and because the insights are so powerful. And the big takeaway is that age is not a barrier to learning. It doesn't matter whether you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, or beyond. You can still master new skills if you use the right techniques. So I'm now going to just share some of the principles from Make It Stick and things that will help you learn faster and more effectively, whether you're studying for a career change or a new hobby or just for the love of learning. So, as I was saying, after struggling to get my head around VoiceFlow, I decided to get the book Make It Stick, and this is really, as I say, the most revolutionary book on studying, and I wish it had been around when I was studying, because it's really changed the way I think about learning. And it's based on actual scientific research, not just what feels effective but what's proven to work. And honestly, it challenged a lot of the misconceptions I had about studying. Like, as I said before, I used to sort of read and reread notes, highlight pages, or cramming the night before the exam. And it turns out those methods aren't the best way to learn. In fact, they're pretty inefficient. Instead, Make It Stick lays out an evidence-based strategy that actually improves retention, understanding, and application. And If I'd known these techniques back in medical school, I think my life would have been a lot easier. So let's go through some of the most powerful principles from Make It Stick and how you can use them to study smarter and not harder. First of all is retrieval practice. Test yourself. This one is huge. The idea is simple. Really actively recording information is way more effective than just rereading it. Instead of passively reviewing your notes, quiz yourselves. Quiz yourself. Use flashcard apps like Anki, or just cover your notes and try to recall the key points. Now, after reading a chapter or attending a lecture, pause and mentally summarize what you've just learned without looking at your notes. Also, regular self-testing on even older material keeps it fresh and it strengthens your memory. And then there's, of course, spaced repetition. Spread it out. We've all been guilty of last-minute cramming, but the research is clear. Learning over time is way more effective than trying to shove everything into your brain the night before the exam. And the idea is to plan your study schedule so that you review material multiple times, weeks or even months before the time, not in one big chunk. Use tools like spaced repetition systems to remind you when to review older topics. Mix things up. Rotate through different subjects rather than spending hours on just one. Interleave practice is very important. So here's an interesting study. Instead of studying one topic at a time, try switching between multiple related topics, and it actually improves your ability to apply knowledge flexibly. So if you're studying maths, don't just do one type of problem over and over. Mix it in with different problem types. And if you're studying or practicing a sport or a skill, don't just drill the same technique. Alternate between different drills. And I'm going to use this for practicing squash. And this forces your brain to stay engaged and adapt, which improves real-world application. Fourth principle is elaboration. Explain and connect ideas. This is one of my favorites. The more you explain and connect new ideas to what you already know, the deeper your understanding. Try teaching someone else what you've learned, even if it's just talking out loud to yourself. If you want to master something, teach it. Of course, mind maps are great to visually connect different concepts. And ask yourself, why does this work? How does it relate to what I already know? And the deeper the connections, the better you'll remember it. So these are just a few of the powerful takeaways from Make It Stick, but trust me, these methods do work. And the best part is they're not just for students. Whether you 30s, 40s, 70s or 80s beyond, you can still learn effectively. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Of course, if you got any value from this video, like and subscribe to my channel. It really does help with the YouTube algorithm. So until next time, study well.